Let's start with values and types. In Python, we have types such as str, int, float, and bool. So for example, if we have a string of words, characters, anything, it will belong to the type str. And if we have an integer such as the number 10, 15, 20, this belongs to the type int or int. And if we have, for example, the number 25.5, where we have a floating point number, this will belong to the type float. And finally, we have the bool, and in this case, it only consists of two cases, and either true or false, and they're both Boolean expressions and Boolean types, so they will belong to the type bool. Let's go ahead and create our first Python program. So we'll go to File, Open Folder, and let's create, we have here the Python folder, just select it, and here we have our Python folder, and here let's create our file, creating new file, and let's save it in the Python folder in the desktop. Let's name it first.py, save, and here we have our first Python file. So as we said, we have some types in Python. For example, a string such as hello world. And if we want to know the type of this string, we can simply print, and what we should print is the type of this, and let's run this code. So we get class str. Now if we enter, for example, an integer here, let's say 100, run this code one more time, we'll get the type int. Same thing with a float, 100.5, we'll get float, and finally let's try a true. Run this code, we get a bool. Now remember that Python is case sensitive, and for example, if we typed true with a lowercase t, we'll get an error saying that true is not defined, and we'll get to the keywords or the reserved words in Python later on in the next videos. But for now, remember that we can try t, but with a capital, true with a capital T. Now let's go ahead and print some statements. So we'll use the print method developed for us in Python, and let's print hello world. Simply close the parentheses, run this code, we'll get hello world. Let's, for example, print the number 1, and we'll get 1. Now let's assign these values to some variables, and this is called an assignment statement. So for example, if we don't want to print this number directly, we can simply assign it to a variable called number, which will be equal to 1, and then if we want to print this number, we can simply refer to it as the name number. Run this code, we'll get the same result. And of course, the type of this variable is the same type of the value it refers to. So for example, here we have an integer stored in the number, in the variable called number. And if we go ahead and print the type of this variable number, we get int, which is an integer. Now, how do we write our variable names? First of all, our variable names can contain both letters and numbers. However, we can't start with a number. So for example, if we name our variable 1 Alex, Python will give us a syntax error saying that this is an invalid syntax. we can't start with a number. The same thing, for example, if we use the add character, after in the variable name, it will also give us an error. It is legal to use uppercases letters, but it's good idea to begin variable names with a lowercase letter. And it's good to mention that we can use the underscore character. For example, if we have a variable name that consists of two words, for example, hello world, and we don't want to put them together, um, we can simply use the underscore between them. So let's go ahead and create it here in the Visual Studio Code. For example, if we want to name our variable hello world, instead of writing hello world like this, we can simply use the underscore and it will be working correctly. And now we have our hello world variable. Now let's go ahead and talk about some um, reserved words in Python. So for example, we have the false, none, true, and, as, assert, and break. And these words are reserved in Python. We can't use them but for their specific purpose. And we'll talk about each and every one of them later on in the next videos. But for now, you just need to know that we have some reserved word in Python that we can't use as variable names. That being said, see you in the next video.